Fantastic. So welcome to everybody. Really, as I say, an exciting sort of point for us, because we've had a whole period of time where we've just been talking about how we can react to this terrible, terrible situation. But now we're entering that phase where we start to say, how can we build a fantastic community that can really support the needs of children, young people? And clearly one of the massive priorities is to support everybody's mental well-being. And we've got a fantastic, superb sort of team across the sort of a district, involving all of the different organizations right across the board, and everybody absolutely committed to seeing what we can do. So we're going to be hearing from some of the different organizations, from local authority through to our health services. So we're going to start actually with sort of our Sasha, who is just such a wonderful leader in this space. So Sasha, can I hand over to you?
Thank you, Mark, and thank you for that introduction. And lovely to be here with everyone. So my name's Sasha Batt, and I am the Head of Mental Wellbeing for the Council and for the CCG, which is the Clinical Commissioning Group, the NHS body in Bradford and Craven. And what I want to do today is share with you our high-level strategy in terms of what we're hoping to achieve in terms of improving the mental well-being of children and young people, but really thinking about that future for children and young people. And then my colleagues who actually do the delivery of some great work across our system, so Ruth, Dennis, Lisa Stead, Helen Ioannou, are going to take you through some of the actual delivery of our services. So if I just start to share my screen, and you will hopefully see this.
That's working beautifully, Sasha.
Thank you. So this really is based on years of engagement and co-production with children, young people and families, and with our frontline staff, in terms of what do we understand about the mental well-being and the things that impact on children and young people's mental well-being in our district, and what do we want to hope and how do we want them to achieve. And it really took us away from a medical model, a clinical model of mental illness, to really thinking about that wider perspective of mental health, and how good emotional well-being sets a young person up for good learning, for good opportunities, and for a good life later on. So really our strategy has now really focused on better lives and brighter futures for children and young people. That's then come into some 8 key statements that children, young people and families have come up in terms of what our strategy and how we should be delivering our services to our population. And they're very much focused on 3 key pillars about promoting those better lives, protecting rights and understanding the inequalities that people face, and improving their access to support. So I'm not going to read those out, and hopefully these will be shared with you, but they are very much aimed at thinking about what do we as services, how do we serve our population and our communities better, and how do we empower, how do we build the focus of providing communities, schools, workplaces that really focus on making people's emotional mental well-being good, and that allows that whole journey approach. So the way that we're hoping to do this, particularly in the context of schools and working with schools, is really having that whole coherent offer. And you're going to hear much more about this later on in terms of how we're working together in terms of our Living Well schools, and how that will embed our Healthy Minds approach throughout that, in terms of what can we do to protect people's mental well-being, emotional well-being, right from the moment of preconception, birth, through to those early years, those developmental years, and then as they move into childhood, young adulthood and into adulthood, and really thinking about how those key messages, those tools, those ways of working really embed together. And the way that we want to really hope and deliver our services is looking at that integrated model. So not thinking about the previous things that we've heard from school teachers, we've heard from children and people themselves about the barriers to access, the thresholds of need, and how that creates further barriers and inequalities for children and young people accessing our services. So we've got a very much working on, and many of you will have heard these from the workshops that we've done with schools around the Thrive model. And the Thrive model is an evidence-based model which looks at how we work as an integrated service with our local authority, with the voluntary and community sector, with our clinical and specialist services. really focuses on how do we ensure young people, families can get advice, what that universal offer looks like to everyone, what we do to make sure people know how to access and get help, and then how we can make sure that people need more help, or we provide that risk support. And what we know from experiences, from real life stories of children and people, is those things don't act in isolation. You can be somebody who's getting risk support and being supported in a crisis, but still have support and offer wrapped around that enables that recovery and enables that progression to happen. So this is really how we're hoping to do, and how our services currently are now being organised. So you'll see that universal offer that is shared through your assemblies, through the work of the mental health champions, and the mental health champions now are in have 170 of the 210 schools in our district engaged. We've got CAER being offered, and they offer webinars based at the school assemblies, and that CAER offer is that early web-based counselling support, which has pathways right through to our specialist services when, if needed, for escalation, but also the guideline and the Healthy Minds website that we've developed. And the Healthy Minds website really helps both parents and children know what support's available to them, where it is, and how to access that in an easy way. And then guideline is that telephone support that we at the moment provide from 12 p.m. to 12 a.m. and is a free phone number, 0800 1 841 841. I'm hoping I've got that right. And that provides support. It provides a listening ear. It provides access to some of our grief and loss services, to additional support, and it's a really great place to start if you need that support. And there's been specific support put in for head teachers and for schools. So that's our universal offer to everyone and to our whole community, our whole population. We then have additional things which, as I said, some of my colleagues are going to talk through later on, but we're developing the mental health Trailblazers, which we have in 4 areas at the moment in Bradford, and our ambition is to increase those in a stepped way across our whole population. And that's really engaging with schools in terms of developing that whole school approach, providing specific support, and really building access to support. We've got a fantastic award-winning Youth in Mind service, which provides that early intervention prevention support, and then that leads through to some of our specialist services. So really, in a nutshell, as I said, our aim, what children and people want us to be able to do, is offer them that support, that access, that ambition in terms of their life as a whole, as a person, and to deliver that brighter future for them. We have a system vision that everybody will be happy, and happy is that mental health aspect of the happy, healthy at home, and a healthy mind is a healthy body. So really thinking about how we embed that. And we have an absolute aim throughout all of our services that we promote mental well-being, we protect the mental well-being of our population, and we improve mental well-being. And that is a whole journey approach for the child, the family, and for adults as well. And this is really how we hope our strategic ambition will work together with our partners. We've changed how we work, both in terms of building our partnerships with service delivery, but really basing that in terms of children and people's experience, and being informed by good research, by data, by understanding our population and understanding our communities. So I think I'm going to finish there and hand over to Ruth, I think.
Ruth, are you okay? Or I think we have you coming on later on the agenda. Do you want to go now? Or
either way, don't mind. Stick with your agenda. I'll come on when you're ready.
Super. Okay, well, thank you so much, Sasha. Brilliant as always. And just to flag to everybody, we had a really exciting conversation with sort of John Wright earlier about seeing if we can get some welcome sort of funding to support a lot of the sort of work across the sort of district. So some really exciting things sort of happening. Just to say to everybody, all of the details that Sasha gave will be circulated after the webinar, as sort of always. So don't worry about scribbling down all the information. We will make sure that it's disseminated. Please do feel free to put any sort of questions to any of the panelists in the sort of chat. We will try and get those either in the webinar any unanswered questions, we always do try and get answers back to the sort of a group later on. So what I'm going to do now is hand over to Duncan. So it's really exciting for me because Duncan and I are actually in the sort of same sort of a building. So we really are in recovery phase now. So let me hand over to Duncan for our local authority public health perspective.
Okay, thanks, Mark. So what I wanted to do today was to give you a quick update on the COVID situation, but also really think about recovery and bring you up to speed with what we're thinking about in terms of Living Well schools and how we want to take that forward with you and capitalise on all the work that we've been doing together over the last 6 months, really, to try and improve long-term outcomes for children as well after COVID. So I'm going to try and do both those things really, really quickly. So just to start off with, and I sent an update out last week, but I know some of you like statistics and some of you don't. So I'll give you a few statistics, but not too many, but just to bring you up to date on what's happening around infection levels in Bradford. So after having about 70 schools that we had information on with clusters or outbreaks at the end of last term, 2 weeks into this term, you are collectively holding the line. I think that is the message. So thank you and well done. The numbers of schools with 2 or more cases in the last couple of weeks really isn't rising at the moment. So we've got 29 schools out of the 200 that we've got some information from you at the moment, and that's stayed fairly level over the first 2 weeks of this term, which is good news. So hopefully that is the impact of the vaccination programme and lower infection levels that we've had in months in Bradford, having that impact on schools, and hopefully you're seeing that as well in terms of the numbers of children that you're having to ask to self-isolate. So that's good news. And then I usually try and split it down into the different key stages as well. So for preschool and primary school children, the infection levels are 29 and 50 per 100,000. So 29 for preschool and 50 per 100,000 for primary school. So that's staying level. And then the good news is that secondary school infection rates are continuing to fall. So second week in a row that we've had quite a big fall, and they've gone down to 110 per 100,000. So that's falling as well, which is great news. And then probably the other things, just to let you know about the data, in terms of vaccination, we're now up to about 55% of the entire population have had the first dose, and over 15% have had the second dose. And across all our primary care networks now, regardless of where they are in the city, we've seen greater than 80% coverage in those risk groups, those first priority groups as well, which is really, really good news. And hopefully within schools as well, if you've got any clinical vulnerability and moving down to anybody over, I think it's 45 at the moment, you should have all been offered a vaccine as well. So that is being rolled out really, really quickly. And then in terms of our hospitals, Airedale Hospital now, if you look on the COVID dashboard, they've got 1 COVID patient, and Bradford Royal Infirmary somewhere between 25 and 30. So that's really fallen as well. And then the numbers of COVID deaths has really come down as well. So it's less than 5% of our overall deaths in the district now, whereas at one stage near January, we were nearly half of all the deaths in Bradford were down to COVID. So that's really, really come down as well, which is good news. So that's a bit of news on that. And just to let you know that we have got a bit more flexibility over the prioritisation for the next vaccination stage as well. So we'll be thinking about what the key risk groups are over the next 2 or 3 months. So that's the data. The other thing, if you don't know already, I'm sure you do know, but the criteria for the self-isolation payments for parents, that's been expanded to parents that are having to self-isolate because of a test and trace notification. So it's not just adults with COVID now, it's contacts and their children that you can also apply and help your parents apply for that, which is good news. And then in terms of the testing guidance, I don't really feel I need to tell you much more anymore because you're all such experts now. But I think George is always busy putting the most up-to-date evidence that we've got on the Bradford Schools online webpage. But I think the key messages are that the simple messages really is that everybody needs a confirmatory PCR test if you've got a positive lateral flow test or rapid test. There's no complexity in that now, just everybody needs a confirmatory PCR. So that's one message. And the second thing is that there still isn't any change to the 10-day isolation period. So if you've got a positive LFT, then positive PCR, you need to self-isolate for 10 days, regardless of whether you get a negative test. That's the other key message for parents. So George has put the one-page flow chart on that. And so I think that's important. And then there was another question in the chat. Somebody was saying we're experiencing low levels of reporting to the DfE website. And I know it is a bit of a pain reporting these because I've had to do it for my own children, and you have to put the information in every time. What we will do to try and help you be a little bit more persuasive about the need for this for parents is I'll talk to George next week and see if we can get a really simple but persuasive narrative that you can use with parents to try and encourage them to keep secondary school kids on message around getting those twice weekly, because the LFTs are picking up 20 or 30% of our school cases, so it is a really important bit of stopping that transmission. So thank you for that question, and we'll try and provide a bit of support on that for you next week. The final thing that I just wanted to mention, because it's in the news a lot, is around the variants of concern. And you've seen the news about India, and we've got some known variants of concern from South Africa and from Brazil and from India now. And people have been asking me, you know, what can we do on a local level around that? And I think for me, it's continuing with all the prevention work you've got. That variants develop when there's a lot of COVID about, and it's just probability. So the less COVID that we have in Bradford and the less infections that we have, the smaller chance that we've got nationally of developing variants of concern. So that is just keeping up with the basics, I think: hand space, face masks, social distance while we've got the regulations, and all those things that you're doing. And just to say as well, thanks for the intelligence that we get through from reporting to schools. So the information that we'll be getting from you this week about families almost circumnavigating the world to avoid the expensive hotel fees when they get back to England, that's really, really useful. We feed that back up nationally. We're trying to develop solutions locally about how we can support families with those expensive fees and so on. So that's really, really important, the information that you've given us about returning families from Pakistan and elsewhere in the world as well. So thanks very much for that. And then the final thing is, it's just a note as well, is that I sent this out last week as well, that we've had right from the start of COVID massive support from the Council for Mosques in Bradford, and the British Islamic Medical Association have endorsed the view that taking a COVID test, taking a COVID vaccine during Ramadan does not invalidate the fasting, and that's a really, really important message to get across, especially in those areas where you've got a lot of children that might be involved in fasting or Ramadan celebrations as well. So that's the main update on COVID. The other couple of things that I just wanted to, because we're getting this fantastic information back from the Youth COVID Ambassadors Networks right across Bradford, and I just wanted to give you a couple of key messages that we've got from them, because I thought it'd be useful for head teachers as well. So the first thing is the range of attitudes that come through about COVID from young people in Bradford, because you could believe the press sometimes that young people don't care about COVID and don't care about self-isolating, but they really, really do. And the things that we're getting through is that it really is stressing a lot of people out, that they're seeing people crowding on buses, seeing people not wearing masks and so on, and young people are worried about rising infection rates. So I think to try and reassure them, all we can do is go back to those simple messages, is that while we have the regulations in place in school, follow those simple rules. That's all you can do to keep infection levels down, and try and reassure them that it's just those simple things that are the main things. And the other thing that young people are telling us are about the importance of the tutor sessions, the revision classes, the homework clubs, all those additional things that are starting to happen and are developing now in complexity, I suppose, in the way that you're developing those online, are obviously really, really important to young people as well, and they really care about their educational outcomes. So that's a really positive message to feed back to schools. So that segues quite nicely into, I will just ask my glamorous assistant Mark to put on this one slide for me. So here we go. Brilliant. So as we said before, we want to try and capitalise on the fact that you know what public health in the council do now, and the fact that we've spoken to a lot of you on the phone. We've been having these webinars and so on, and I know from individual conversations I've had with you and feedback as well, that you are obviously really concerned and want to move towards long-term futures and educational and health outcomes for kids now. You've told us about physical activity and children coming back a little bit overweight and not as fit as they used to be. We know about social emotional issues that we're going to hear about today. So what we've got on the screen there is our vision for what we want to develop next year with you around Living Well Schools. And this is really to enable schools to transform the health and well-being of the pupils via an individual behaviour choices, but also via whole school approaches, so that that can in itself improve those educational outcomes that children have to live happy, healthy, fulfilling lives and take that into adulthood. So what we've been doing over the last 3 or 4 weeks is working really hard to try and put these different components together, and we've split it up into 3 areas. So with the physical health, we've got, this is really around the obesity epidemic in the UK, and it's about all those different things that we want to do to support schools around increasing physical activity and developing whole school policies to healthy diet and food security. And also bearing in mind that COVID is still going to be around. We don't know in exactly what form, but we're still going to need some form of COVID secure schools, and you're still going to need some advice around that. So in terms of physical health, we want to keep the COVID advice going in that bit. So that's the physical health. The second bit is around social, emotional and mental health, and there's 3 elements to this. There's the good mental well-being that Ruth and Sasha and Helen are going to be talking about today. There's healthy relationships with relationship sex education, because we've done some commissioning around that with step 2 that can develop some specialist support for you. And then there's also going to be the more universal elements of the healthy relationships that are coming into school curriculum. And then there's preventing and mitigating adversity. And this is around adverse childhood experiences and the impact that that can have on children. So we're starting off some work around what an ACE-aware school might look like. And we want to try and give you some advice and support around that as well. So that's the social and emotional support. And then the third thing, which is something that is very close to all our heart, I know, is around inequalities, and the fact that COVID has really shone a spotlight on inequalities in the UK. And we've seen the digital divide and what the impact that has. We've seen the numbers of children that are relying on food banks, and we want to try and do a lot of work around that in poverty proofing the school day and trying to reduce that digital divide. So that's the overall master plan, if you like. Do you want to just take this off now, Mark? Thanks. But we realised that all that is quite complex. And I think the thing for me is that all those different things together, all those interventions across Bradford District are complex. What we want to do for you is make it simple, because one of the things that head teachers have told me is that you're approached all the time by all these different companies. If I don't understand what's going on, you're not going to understand what's going on across Bradford. So if there's complexity in the background, but we want to have a simple front end for you to access Living Well schools with a simple branding and a cohesive and a seamless offer for you. So that's what we're going to be working on. Everything isn't going to be ready at once. We want evolution rather than revolution, but we're going to start working towards that during the 2021-22 school year. And we're going to evaluate that, and building on the COVID ambassadors work and sort of networks we've got here, we want to co-produce that. So we've already done some sessions with head teachers that some of you might have been involved in around Living Well schools, but we want to involve pupils and we want to involve you at every step of the way. So that's the overview, and I just wanted to sort of soft launch that, if you like, today, just to tell you that that will be coming your way in the next academic year. So I'll leave it there, and I think we're going back to mental health now, Mark.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much, Duncan. So let's hand over now to Ruth, who's been well advertised by Sasha, who's very much part of this whole sort of a conversation and how we're going to get educational psychology doing their part for creating this Living Well sort of a school. So Ruth, can I hand over to you, please?
Okay, thanks, Mark. I think I might be able to share my own slides today, Katie. Oh, no, you're going to do it for me. Marvellous. Go on then, you do it. Okay. Here we go. So good evening, everybody. It's Ruth Dennis, educational psychologist, talking to you. Christian asked me to do a 10-minute slot on COVID recovery and support from the educational psychology team. So it started me thinking along the lines of, well, what are we actually saying that we're recovering from here? And if you actually look at the media and the press, you would probably go home and never come back to work. So if you just go on to the next slide for me, Katie. There is a huge dominant narrative going on about mental health at the minute. And it is grim reading. We read about COVID making mental health worse, plagues, there's crisis, there's devastation, the pandemic. And so that's about children's mental health. If we move on to the next slide, and we look at what it says about education, what's going on in the press there, we're talking about a lost generation, we're talking about lost access to education. felt for years to come. We're talking about children losing £350 billion in earnings over their lifetime. It's a really, really grim picture that is being painted by the press. And I just wanted to spend a minute to challenge that really, and just to think about what we mean when we're talking about COVID and COVID recovery. And I think it's really hard not to get taken in by this narrative because it comes from all directions. In the media, you will have experts all the time talking about how damaged young people are. And I think we need to be really careful about the message that we're giving to our young people in schools, and they will be accessing it through social media and through other media as well. Because the prevailing narrative is one of catastrophe, that things are terrible for children and that the rest of their lives are pretty much doomed. And I think the more we tell children that, the more it's going to become part of their psyche that they think that they are the doomed generation. They are going to start thinking of themselves in that way. And that negativity, if we collude with that and continue to be telling children all the time that they are the doomed generation, they're going to start to pick that up and take on that mantle. And we have to be really careful. And so when we're talking about COVID recovery, I think it's really important to think about the language that we're using and how we are communicating the messages to children and young people about what has happened and the things that they've lived through. And when I say that, that doesn't mean to sort of belittle the experiences of some people, because clearly some children from some sectors have had really, really difficult times. But at the same time, that doesn't mean everybody's doomed and there's no hope. So we need to change that narrative. In particular, I think schools are a really fantastic place to do that, from this narrative of being doomed to a narrative of hope. And one of the things I read when I was doing research for this was about why we're not talking about the bounce back generation. So these are young people that have been through a really, really tricky time. And in all likelihood, most of them will come through that. They will come through it and they will overcome the setbacks that they've been through. And we need to be celebrating really and really thinking about and supporting them to think about, actually, we've done really well. We've been through a horrific time and we've come through this as strong individuals. We've survived it. We've developed a skill set that helps us learn about and manage sort of adversity. So I think one of the things that we want to think about as psychologists when we're moving forward is how do we actually start to tell a better, more optimistic story for children and young people, rather than just telling them that they are the doomed generation. So we need to be thinking about celebrating the things that they've done, the things that they've actually managed to achieve and overcome through this adversity. Thinking about how we build on the things that they've learned about themselves, emotionally and intellectually, and think about what skills have they actually acquired that weren't skills that were not necessarily on the national curriculum, but are things that they've learned, whether that's about how they learn themselves, how they engage with learning, or things that are not on the normal curriculum, but are actually really valuable skills. And we need to think as well about the approach that we're taking. So and I think I've heard this a lot in these series of webinars, rethinking about what are our priorities in education, what are we trying to achieve here? And I think when Duncan was talking about living well, it really tries to living well really pulls together that whole notion of the whole child and the whole young person's education. It's not just about the academic, it's about developing them as rounded individuals who've got a really good opportunity to go forward and live happy and fulfilled lives. So we need to be sort of like really focusing down on that. And again, from Duncan's Living Well, thinking about, clearly there are some issues around poverty and how that impacts on education. So we need to be thinking, how can we support children where there's that area of most need? And also thinking about what are the practical things that work for children. There's so much research in Bradford and nationally, but particularly in Bradford, around what works. How do we support children to learn in the most effective way? And if we can harness that and use that, it's really going to give children that ability to bounce back and be the bounce back generation rather than the doomed generation. So just taking us through to what we're doing as an educational psychology team, it ties together with what Sasha's talked about and what Duncan's talked about really. So three core functions really. So the first bit is our day-to-day bread and butter job. So as educational psychologists, we're still there doing the identifying and addressing barriers to learning. That's the same. Children are still going to have special educational needs. They're going to have things that stop them from accessing education for whatever reason. And so we will continue to be meeting needs of complex learners through that plan, do, review, consultation cycle with schools and with education settings. The second element is the mental health focus, and this is really what Sashi was talking about. So the educational psychology team have really done a sort of a bridge between sort of all this sort of like the mental health stuff going on within the council and the sort of education side of it. And so education psychologists have been running mental health champions linked to Sasha's area, and that's going to continue next year. We're also looking at developing an emotional wellbeing charter mark, which really tries to capitalise and sort of make the most of the good practice that we're starting to see all over in Bradford, and people have described it in these webinars, some fantastic work. So we really want to have a Bradford-wide emotional wellbeing charter mark that's really going to drive that forward and celebrate what we've achieved. Through the Trailblazers, we've had a lot of new interventions that we've been developing, looking at how can we support children to become more resilient and to become more engaged and confident in themselves. And so we're going to be rolling them out more widely. We've got the staff wellbeing programme, which is the whole school emotional wellbeing for staff. And we've also got the education emotional wellbeing team that are sitting with us at the moment, who really try and sort of like catch those children that are particularly struggling because of issues related to COVID. So we've got that huge mental health focus as well going forward. And then the final bit, which I think is really important, is that sometimes people sort of badge educational psychology as being a special educational needs service. And actually it's not. It's about psychology and it's about learning, which covers special educational needs, but there's more to it than that. And so how I would probably describe it as we use psychology to enhance learning. And so some of the projects that we've got planned for next year are really about how do we take the understanding and knowledge of what worked and use that to try and support children to enhance their learning. And maybe, I don't want to use the word catch up because I think catch up has too many connotations of you're behind, so you've got to catch up, but we're talking about enhancing learning. So we're going to be running a paired reading project next year. So paired reading is a really strong evidence-based intervention for supporting enjoyment and engagement with reading. And so I think it's going to be really useful for those young people that have missed out on that early opportunity and consistent opportunity for reading. We're running all aboard, we're running it this year, and the CAER are helping us to evaluate that. So that's the early years intervention, which originally started as an intervention for children who were living in poverty and struggling with the initial sort of step into education. But we found that's a really useful intervention for children who have maybe missed that nursery year or the pre-nursery year. So we're going to be running that throughout next year. We've also got a direct instruction project around looking at maths and how we support children with maths using very strongly evidence-based intervention strategy there. So that's what we're doing next year. So just on that, I've put 2 hyperlinks in there, just if anybody wants to start thinking about this, changing the narrative, changing the sort of like thinking and how we talk about children and the way that they are sort of like how they've been affected by COVID. So there's 2 really, really brief articles there, which are quite nice and just sort of like a positive read to get you started and just to counteract some of the negative stuff that you read. It's just quite refreshing. And then final slide, I think I've just put in our contact details there. So that's me, and email me at any time. There's also the Skills for Bradford website. So most of the courses and interventions I end up on Skills for Bradford. And then there's the email there for the education and emotional wellbeing practitioners. So if you do need to contact that team, that's the email to use for that. Okay, that's me done. Thanks.
That's superb. Thanks so much, Ruth, and positive messages that are coming up in the chat about the positivity that we need to get out there. So there is a question in the chat for Duncan. So Duncan's just going to take that now before we hear from Lisa and Helen.
Yeah, so there was a question about clarifying whether the current system of controls in schools need to continue to secure schools. So the answer to that is yes. Until the 21st of June, which is the date when potentially the roadmap ends, these are all the controls that we've got. So there was the list put in the chat there around no mixing of bubbles and staggered school times, you know, testing, all those sorts of things. So yes, please continue with all that. The only thing that was put in there that's changed slightly is the out of school activities. So there are more out of school activities that are starting now. So physical activity, that sort of socialisation, obviously really important for the kids in your school. And George put a few briefings together for that on Bradford Schools Online about safe reopening of those sorts of activities. So have a look at those, and then you can sort of judge yourself about the numbers and about how you can safely open those. But it is possible to start to reintroduce children back to those activities again and sport. But within school, please keep going with all the prevention measures that you do have.
Great, thanks so much, Duncan. So what we can do now is move to Helen and Lisa. I love this because we're just moving from local authority seamlessly to our health service colleagues, because we're all just working together for the benefit of children and young people. I've got the great joy of being able to work with Helen and Lisa. So let me hand them over to you now.
Hi, thank you, Mark. Hi, everyone. My name is Helen Ioannou. I am a service director at Mind in Bradford, and I'm also the programme lead for Youth in Mind, which is what I'm here to talk to you about today. So I was asked to talk a little bit about some of the themes that we're seeing coming through, I guess, our more universal early intervention services, as well as obviously talking you through some of those services, but I've only been allocated 7 minutes, so it will be a whistle-stop tour of those topics. So in terms of themes, essentially it is for me that prevalence is up, more young people are experiencing issues, and young people are experiencing issues. Acuity is also up, so it is around that level, severity, complexity of need. So looking at the Youth in Mind partnership, I think the three most common themes that we've seen across all the interventions we've delivered in the last 12 months, and that's been about 8,300 face-to-face and over 9,000 telephone support sessions and or digital support sessions. Anxiety and stress is number one. Activities and opportunities is number two. You know, we are very solution focused, and young people are really keen to be doing more, which is very much that positive sort of slant on things that Ruth was mentioning. And then COVID-19 support was the third, which I think is really interesting. A lot of the other themes have been similar to previous years. So it is self-care, it is relationships, whether it's family or friends, social isolation, and I think a lot on identity as well. So sexual orientation, disability, gender, faith, ethnicity. You know, the Black Lives Matter movement has really come to the forefront. There's been a lot of trauma and distress around that locally. And then I think maybe the responses to the issues have changed a little bit. It feels like people are responding in a different way. So we are seeing more crisis and more distress. We're seeing more self-harm, more suicidal ideation, hearing voices. A lot of that's coming through now, whereas it wasn't before. It was very sort of low numbers before. Interestingly, around hearing voices, the British Psychological Society have produced some really exciting guidance. It's really useful on understanding psychosis for young people, and it's for the young people themselves or for people who support them. So I would really recommend that. It covers visions, voices and distress. So it's just a really useful thing to have, just to give us that bit more confidence. In terms of the universal services and I guess the early intervention, our approach is very much led by children and young people. So there's a massive range of what we do. Everyone responds to different things. So we try to keep it user-led, relationship-based, solution-focused, goals-focused, and it's very much the goal of the child. And to try and keep it flexible as well. You know, they're really the priorities of, I guess, the VCS and the local authority offer, which is more Bradford Youth Service when I sort of talk about that. So I'm going to share my screen now. I've got a couple of infographics to show you. So the first one, it's kind of the core Youth in Mind offer. There's quite a lot of other services that are kind of packed around the sides, but the core offer that Youth in Mind present is kind of encapsulated here. And it'll be circulated afterwards as well as the leaflet that I'm going to quickly show you after this. So on the left, you've got the real heart of Youth in Mind, so the main services that are sort of in the middle of the Youth in Mind programme. The buddies and peer support right on that left-hand side in particular is the heart of what we offer. So Bradford Youth Service, Sharing Voices Bradford and also Ruthnis all provide support in this sort of buddy and peer support form. So they'll offer up to 12-week one-to-one support. They'll try and get young people into peer support groups. They'll set up new groups. And I think one of the great things about this offer is they also offer all secondary schools in the district half a day a week, where there will be a buddy who's located on site. So it's almost like a buddy clinic half day a week in all the secondary schools, so young people can just rock up as they need to and have a chat with someone. And it might just be a one-off session. It might lead to being referred into buddies and getting ongoing support. It could be signposting elsewhere, but it's just really good to have that person who you know is coming in on this day at this time every week, and you can kind of touch base with them around stuff. I'll also just pull out the Breath Aid Trust's offer. So they offer peer mentoring in schools, which is an amazing offer and has been really successful. This past year was the first year delivering it, and they've hit all their targets, delivered it to the full 21 schools, I believe it is. And they will basically go into your school and they'll meet with either 1 or 2 members of staff and a cohort of pupils who are really dedicated to setting up and delivering a peer mentoring service within that school. It'll be different for every school because it's based on what the school needs and what works for them. Breath Aid Trust will provide some really comprehensive training. They'll get the resources in for you, and they'll give you ongoing guidance and support. So they do like half-term check-ins and stuff like that to see how things are going and help you really sustain it into the future. But the great thing about that is that it is pupil-led. You know, it's what young people want to do, and they kind of came to us and said, we want to help other young people in our schools, which is it's really amazing. It's a fantastic service and a really great offer. So if you move to the right then, Youth in Mind in City, that's being commissioned specifically to support the health inequalities in Bradford Central, which covers those postcodes there. And that's for young people who either live in that area, attend a school that's in that area, or are registered at a GP in that area. So it's quite a broad net. And there's quite a lot of scope there as well. So you've got a really low level offer from Hale, who do social prescribing. You can step up to more early intervention stuff that Inspired Neighbourhoods provide through their nurture groups, which is primarily for primary school children. And then Mind in Bradford, who do one-to-one and group work with anyone from the age of 8 up to 25. And Mind also can go into schools and provide training to staff or deliver, you know, sort of more broad mental health messages at an assembly or for a whole class, or even just tailor a mental health one-off group or a course, depending on what the school and those pupils might need. And then you can step it up even further, and you've got Bradford District CAER Trust offering more specialist intervention for the Youth in Mind in City programme. So Little Minds Matter support young people from obviously conception to age 2, and then the specialist early attachment and development team, they'll support from 0 to 6. So again, just really different offers there depending on what the level of need might be. And then at the bottom, you've just got that bar there for Youth in Mind Plus, which is a short-term programme, so only commissioned until August, I believe. But again, a really nice breadth of different stuff. So you've got a counselling offer from Sharing Voices Bradford for young people who are Black, Asian or minority ethnic background, and then also a counselling offer from Step 2. Then you've got more of a CPD offer for schools. So Bradford Birth to 19 offer leadership training, and Step 2 offer training and support around things like COVID recovery. Buddies have kind of enhanced their offer for Young Plus. So they're offering extra support if you're a Year 7, if you're new to Year 7. And then Carers Resource are offering additional support as well for young carers. So yeah, there's loads of really exciting things there. And I'm now just going to quickly show you our leaflet. I'm not going to talk you through it, don't worry. Has the leaflet come up, or am I going to have to stop screen sharing and restart? Can you see the leaflet now? It's all different.
Yeah, it's come up.
Yeah. Perfect, thank you, Lisa. So this is our new leaflet, a Z fold, and it has everything on the infographic plus more. We've tried to capture a little bit more about what's going on in the district in this. So we've got more of the crisis offer. We've got a universal offer in Ruth, and it's just really nice and colourful, and it has all the information about how you can get in touch. Crucially, it's got the Youth in Mind website on it, so please do go to that, because all the referral forms and stuff are embedded on the website, so that makes it really easy to access. So your red bar across there, for example, is your crisis services. You've got all your buddies in green there, and your various providers for that. Your counselling services there are in blue, and Ruth is the one, I will just draw your attention to, that is really, at its heart, a universal offer. A young person can go to ruth.com and they can just instantly speak to a counsellor. There's no waiting list. Obviously, it's online, and they can provide ongoing support for a period of time for that young person, which is amazing. So I think that's everything from me, and my whistle stop of universal services and early intervention. So I'll hand over now to Lisa, who will discuss a little bit more about what specialist provision there is available.
I can't share until you've stopped. Oh. Right, I should be sharing now from the beginning. Okay, so I could talk forever about this, but I think I was allocated 3 minutes, so I'm going to have to talk at high speed. Obviously, any questions? I don't know why it's repeating what I'm saying. So I just want to tell you about the mental health support teams. Oh my goodness, why is it going so fast? So the mental health support teams are in only a certain number of schools across the district. We're in 4 different areas, and I'll show you the schools in a minute, and obviously you'll get the slides so you'll be able to see which schools they're in around your areas, unless they're actually in your school, because I recognise some faces. So we've got 2 main functions. We deliver evidence-based intervention for children with mild to moderate mental health problems, and we also support the school leadership team in a whole school approach. The schools that we're covering, we've got some schools in Bradford East, we've got some in Bradford South, Craven and Keighley. If you look at these, this display of schools, you can see that the wave 2, there's more schools in there, and that's because the staff that are in those teams are now qualified, so they can expand into a bigger population of children. But next year, all 4 teams will be able to cover a population of 8,000 children. So we will be on the hunt for more schools. The whole school approach, the kind of themes that have come out of the whole school approach, and what we do is we do an audit, and we use various different audits. Quite often we're using the Anna Freud audit tool. But 2 main themes are about staff wellbeing and about understanding mental health issues for both staff and young people. So we've delivered 70 to 70 staff a wellbeing session, 258 staff have attended CPD sessions. We've done some different delivery of sessions with young people, sort of some groups of young people. We've supported the apprentices to deliver the KCU, I don't know if people's heard about that, to 2,500 pupils. We've got a weekly support line and a parent support group. So from January to now, we've received 160 referrals, 106 were females, 46 men, 1 non-binary. So you can see that, you know, we've got a theme of more females coming through. The referrals are scattered between the ages that we work with, but we definitely have more saturation in years from age 12 to 16. And the ethnic breakdown is 85 white British, 26 Asian Pakistani, and then the other is just very, very small numbers. So the referral source here, I just wanted to show you this one because this shows that actually 109 of those referrals have come direct to from the school. The family and CAMS have also made some referrals, so sometimes through parent support groups we're picking up referrals, and CAMS are doing a step down and a step up model. So contacts, as you can see there, our face-to-face contacts in March increased because of lockdown. And then primary reason for referral, very similar to what Helen was saying, that we've got a massive number of children with anxiety, but what we've actually seen in this quarter is a rise in the low mood depression one, because we didn't have a lot of low mood depression previously. So we're seeing that a lot more in this quarter. How do you get involved? We are looking for schools to work with to increase the numbers for the Bradford South and for Keighley, and that'll probably start around January, February. So please email us, let us know you're in that area and that you're interested. If you're not in those 2 areas but still interested, we're obviously wanting to build more teams as a whole system. So we'd be really, really excited to get your email and to put you in for that side into that waiting list for new teams. And then I just wanted to end with the useful links. So on the Healthy Minds website, there's a little well-being. Oh God, I can't remember what she calls herself. It's like a little computer, like a robot thing, and you put in your details and it takes you to the services. it's actually really good if you just have a little trial of it. We've got our staff wellbeing booklet on there that we've developed, and we've got a Twitter and an Instagram account, which I urge you all to follow us, because we do lots of different kind of campaigns, and that's me done.
Fantastic. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Helen. Really wonderful stuff. And if people look in this sort of a chat, you'll see that sort of our Sasha has explained what KCU is and given you a link to a YouTube video, which I really encourage you to have a look at. It's really fantastic, really inspiring. So we're going to seamlessly move on now to Christian, who's going to tell us the latest about Swoosh. So Christian, over to you. So again, great. So Christian from the school sort of sector. So again, just that multi-agency work. So over to you, Christian.
Thank you, everyone. I'm just going to share my screen now, I hope. There we go. Okay, so let's start from the beginning. Okay, so I'm going to be talking to you about the School Staff Welfare Support Service today, and to update you on some of the offers that's through this particular programme. Just before I do that, just to say that this is a deliberate attempt today to start that process of steering the city from COVID response to COVID recovery. It's a phrase I think I'm really behind. And so part of that offer really to the whole of the city will be this specialised COVID webinar offer. We're looking at children's mental health today. Our next COVID webinar on the 20th of May will be about the well-being of school staff. So we can focus on response, but we're now moving the city towards COVID recovery. And also just to back up some of the comments we've heard about living well, I'm so excited about this offer into next year. One place where schools can go to access all the support they need around physical health, mental health, and classroom inequalities, and it'll do wonders in Bradford. I'm really excited about it. Just to say once again to everybody, we've got some new people on the call today. The School Staff Welfare Support Service, it's a counselling and support offer in part, and that's available for all staff, and it's available now. And to access that, you ask for a wellbeing check in the first instance, and the telephone numbers there are on the screen: 01535 228 335 or 228 332. And you access a wellbeing check, and then at that point, that might be all you need. You might be signposted to some other mental health services, or you can access free therapeutic talking therapy support from trained counsellors. It's a really good offer. And just for people on the call today, we've supported about 100 school staff through that offer since January, and that's 100 schools who are benefiting from colleagues who might be in real crisis now, or who are now in school when they might not have been. And also to let you know about a wonderful offer from the Cellar Trust, which is available from the 4th of May. You've got the hyperlink there, and it will be sent out with the notes from today's meeting. But these are 1 or 2 hour courses, much more bite-sized, easily accessible offers from the Cellar Trust. It's a Shipley-based charity, and the offers are there in front of you: Stress Buster, improving sleep, low mood, and an offer on suicide awareness. There are 2 on each of those topics there each week from now on, from the 4th of May right until the end of June. Staff can just go and opt into them. You don't need to be referred on to by your head teacher. It's an offer you can make, school leaders on the call today, to your staff, and they can access them, and they don't need to feel that they need to tell you about it. So it's anonymous in that sense, not connected through to school leadership. Really powerful offer there. And the reason we're doing this is because we've listened to colleagues on previous webinars who said that this offer is important, and we listened to you, and therefore we've delivered this. To let you also know about the Bradford School Leaders Forum, one of the conversation pieces that I've kind of like picked up on a number of occasions is that if you're in a school leadership position, one of the things that brings you stress is lack of information or needing to search for the right information. And so we want to support communication between school leaders and to make support that you will give each other much easier by providing a forum. So this is a message board where you can post messages, respond to them, and it's a place also for document storage. I'll talk more about that at the next webinar, but this is in process now. So wherever you are in Bradford, if you've got a gathering together of schools, the Keighley schools together, or whatever it might look like, you can create your own group within this forum and use it, and it's free to schools. We've had really generous funding from the Bradford Opportunity Area of about £20,000 to get this set up, and there it is available for you to use, and that would be particularly in play from September at the start of next academic year. I've not got very much time, but I could not stop myself from just telling you about the free offer for all Bradford primary schools, which is 50 Things to Do Before You're 5. In a few weeks' time, we'll be celebrating our 3rd birthday, 50 Things to Do Before You're 5. We've reached out to 35,000 Bradford families over the past 3 years. If you're a Bradford primary school and you're not doing 50 Things, it's there for you. Activity-based learning, having fun with your parents, going out there into the sunshine is a really important way of supporting young children's mental health as well. And if you're a little one, age 2, 3, 4 and 5, your mental health is just as important as it is if you're an older child. 50 Things to Do Before You're 5 is free there. Just get in contact with me or Rachel Dennis. The details are on this slide there, and that's a free offer of support for every single Bradford primary school as well. There, that's me. I'm going to pass back to Mark.
Fantastic, thank you, Christian. So we've got now our talking heads. Really brilliant to hear from the heads and see the school perspectives. Without any further ado, I'll hand over to John, who's going to talk to us about mental health and working as a Pathfinder school. Over to you, John.
Yeah, thank you. Lisa's obviously been on to talk about the Trailblazers scheme, and we're one of the schools, and it's something that's I mean, if heads got reservations about it, I can only fully support it and the impact it's had in our school and our academy already, although it's very new. Thanks you, Christian and the Birth to 19 for linking us up for this. So to give that what that looks like in school, we have regular meetings with the workers. We have a list of students where we have discussions. We have clear criteria about what levels of students can gain support from, and it's that level below. For secondary school, we're very much about that level below CAMS, and it's pre-CAMS, which is always the biggest worry for us, because when it gets to CAMS, it's almost already gone. So it's that proactive work, which for me, as someone whose background's in pastoral and safeguarding, I think is essential, and that's been something that's really we've picked up on. It has made a big difference already in a short space of time. We arrange the meetings, we select the students, we gain consent. Many of you know from previous webinars, we serve a very diverse community with a predominantly British Pakistani background, and mental health's not been something that's has been big in our community in Keighley, and we've done a lot of work with that. But the parents have engaged really well, the support's been there, and the students have appreciated the interventions. So we have a lot of individual interventions, a lot of group interventions. The general themes for us have been self-esteem, motivation. There's been some on bereavement, because we've lost a lot of parents and family members to COVID, and a lot on anxiety. And they've been the 4 themes that have come out for us as a school. We've also had a big whole school training on it. So every staff has been trained about it. We've had joint assemblies. Staff have had the offer of support and counselling, which has been really beneficial to the staff, especially going through this challenging period. And the feedback from parents. So far, we've seen improvements in a number of those cohort that are gaining support in attendance and behaviour. I've put engagement and not progress at the moment, because we're only at the infancy of the programme, but it's really positive. So in terms of schools and running it, what that's led us to do is increase our mental health check-ins on students during form times. We have a key vulnerable group for every year that every year leader checks in on a weekly basis. Some of those students on a daily basis. The joint assemblies have raised the profile around it. We've increased our nurture provision. As an academy trust, we put our ERP program in place. We've introduced Christmas time onwards the 5-point emotional regulation system with our students. And again, we've restructured some of our SEN teaching team to have a bigger focus around intervention. So we have one resilience intervention group and a self-esteem intervention group, healthy relationships intervention group, and an emotional regulation group. So they undertake a number of interventions across the academy, and we're just starting our peer mentor training with students in each year group. So that's sort of just a whistle-stop quick flavour of what we do at UAK. What I would say is if any schools are considering it, they've got questions, and obviously I'm secondary based, then if you want to get in touch with me, I'm more than happy to talk about it and say that I think it's having a massive positive impact for our young people, and I think it's an absolutely fantastic scheme, because I feel it was something that was very much missing for secondary schools in other areas that I worked at. So no, we're really enjoying being part of the scheme so far. So hopefully that gives you a bit of flavour. That Mark, save 2 minutes for you there.
Yeah, fantastic, John, as always. But inspirational, right? And just fantastic. It's great to hear you just sort of reflect back just the great work that health services are doing. But likewise, I know that they're incredibly grateful for you supporting the work that they're trying to roll out across the district. Really testimony to the fantastic work across the Bradford. So, Rob, can I ask you to now just talk to us about how you're using teaching assistants to support children and staff's mental well-being?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Hi, everyone. I think what this session today has shown is there's a wealth of resources and interventions and programmes that we can draw on from right across the district. So I'm going to talk a little bit about a particular programme that we've been using in school over the last year or so. I'm not selling that programme because really it's just about how we've utilised our teaching assistants to support mental wellbeing. But we began working with an organisation called Gembis in Schools. They're very small and they only work with a few schools at the moment, I understand. But it was set up by a clinical psychologist based in Ilkley who wants to reach out to school-aged children to support children who may be suffering from disadvantage due to their mental well-being. So we began this journey kind of before we even went into the pandemic, and it got disrupted somewhat by circumstances. But what it did was provide some training for teaching assistants, and that's what really interested us, was about how we could kind of train up staff who would be able to support children with a kind of a sort of semi-therapeutic approach, if you like, really. And so training was provided for 2 specific members of staff, but also for the whole staff team as well. And what was really important to us that we selected staff. I'd like to think that all of our staff are very nurturing in their approach, but in particular, we chose staff that were known for their expertise and their nurture in terms of their approach with children. And the programme very much focuses on helping children to manage their own feelings and anxiety. It provides some individual support where required, but generally provides group work, so it brings a small group of children together to be able to talk about feelings and anxiety in a very child-friendly kind of way. It was important, I think, for us to have something that kind of supported staff to have that confidence in this field, but also I think what staff have fed back to me is that it's important not to stick too rigidly to that programme as well. We talk a lot about fidelity to intervention and so on. I firmly believe that's important, but I think when you're talking about children's anxieties or worries, that you're able to kind of lead from where they are as well. And so that's very much why you need to kind of choose your staff carefully as well. People that are confident to be able to to lead from things that may come up in conversation as well. But what I'm really proud of is that across the school now, particularly in Key Stage 2, we've been able to provide a platform for children to talk about how they feel. And what staff have fed back is that lots has come up. Interestingly as well, I think the younger the child is, the more able they are to open up in that context. And so it takes a little while to kind of dig into that and to provide some fun context in which children can kind of can raise their concerns. And actually, you need to get over that kind of sense of embarrassment. But also, one other thing that was very important, that was children had an out. It wasn't a forced thing. That actually it was an inviting environment, but one in which children could say they didn't feel comfortable, they didn't want to kind of engage in that kind of conversation. And as I said, it focused very much on children recognising their emotions and feelings, but also about the effects that had on their bodies. So there's lots of talk around the fight or flight response and the impact on the amygdala, and about teaching children very specific strategies that they could use in times of stress or anxiety. In talking to one of the members of staff that's delivered the programme, they talked about the fact that actually it was really good to have different strategies to use there to be able to, so for example, she used an example from herself of when she's on the tube in London, that she can't use certain strategies that would kind of draw further attention to her. So she kind of taught children very specific strategies that would work in different situations. So some important considerations, I've got 50 seconds left, I noticed, is that we've got that staff adapt activities according to the age of the children, and they respond sensitively to whatever the children bring up, building on their own experiences as well. In terms of what we've seen in school, the programme's is working, it's in work in progress as we speak, but there were really clear examples of how children were able to identify helpful and unhelpful thoughts within the school context. So one example was how a child walked into an art lesson and normally would say, I hate art, and actually it led to kind of disruption within that session. But actually, they've been taught strategies that help them to turn their thoughts into a helpful thought, to be able to say, I'm going to give it a go. Popped off there. I'm going to give it a go. I'm going to nail this. And actually what it led to was a more positive response to a lesson that they didn't normally enjoy doing. And so what we're starting to see already is that it's leading to really positive outcomes for academic achievement as well. Just to finish off, I want to kind of reflect what Ruth was saying as well, in terms of being able to tell a positive story about children's mental health. We are seeing that although we know the children who are suffering at the moment, we have seen children return to school with a very positive mindset, and that's something that we're definitely building on in the time ahead. I've gone 30 seconds over, I'm going to stop talking. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rob. Thanks so much. And just love hearing that positivity come through. Sarah, can I hand over to you to tell us about adapting the curriculum to take account?
Yeah. I just want to start where Rob left off and just say that absolutely, completely agree with what Ruth was saying earlier. We made the very conscious choice that we had a very can-do on return to school. Our children came running back to school and actually have really benefited from the can-do attitude. So we talked a lot. We really supported our children and their mental health and our parents during lockdown. We purposely took a day called Wellbeing Wednesdays, where we did lots and lots of wellbeing activities based around the NHS 5 ways to wellbeing. And we did exactly the same for our staff, because we felt screen time needed to come down, and it was brilliant. We put on lots and lots of different things, and we asked the children to do lots of challenges around. We made virtual playtimes, so those children could meet up with their friends virtually through Google Classrooms, and we did lots of physical activities. We gave permission to say, get out and go to the park. Go and do something with your children that's fun, but that fun and that play is as important as doing any of your schoolwork in that traditional sense. So when we came back to school, our values here are kind, confident and successful. And that kindness, the kindness came from using the language that was appropriate. So we literally trained all our staff to not use language such as catch up, learning gaps, lost learning, recover, make up, behind, speed up, cramming. We don't use that. So what we're catching up to, the whole country, like this. So the language we have been using has been map where we are. We did the map, master, move forward approach with our curriculum. And when we came back on the 8th of March, we dedicated at least one afternoon a week on physical and mental well-being. So we did more PE, more PSHE, more music and listening and art appreciation. And that was an important blend as we went from the 8th of March to Easter. Now we're back fully in. Our children are mapping where they've been. We're mastering prior learning. We're moving forward. We're consolidating and strengthening prior learning. We're building upon, we're enhancing, we're developing, and we're addressing misconceptions. And the we in this is we are all in this together. And I can honestly say, and we've just talked about it now, our adults changed here. Our adults change to meet our children, but our children here are probably have developed the most resilience I've ever seen. They have made progress through lockdown. Results are super. We are delighted. And actually what we've done, I think, is had a holistic view of the child, not in a, oh, they're all going to be really, but actually, what did we do? How do we support through lockdown? Our parents are very trusting of us because we supported them. And I think the way we've adjusted our curriculum means that master, map, master and move is not about you've got a lot to catch up. It's about we are where we are, but you know what? We're going to plow on together because it's absolutely normal for all of us. So that is all I'm going to say, because Mark has already sent me a message saying stop. We also just thought I'd share you a little funny, because one of the things we set up during our lockdown and into this is our kindness self. So as staff, we have kindness selves and we look after each other. And I've just sent this beautiful card to my deputy, which I'm his kindness self, but don't tell him. And I just thought it was gorgeous. And it just said, I saw this card and thought of you. And I think that's kind. So I just thought I'd share that little ditty with you. Thank you all.
Thank you, Sarah. And you were getting applause while you were speaking, by the way. And I've also been getting direct messages, and Duncan and I were just sort of saying, what a change in the atmosphere. Isn't this fantastic? I mean, 6 months ago, our heads were down, but we can just feel that sort of positivity. We can just capture this and keep driving forward. It's just wonderful. So I'm going to very quickly move on to Lynette, who's going to tell us about working with Step 2, because I really want to give Kirsten just the opportunity to speak to us. So Lynette, can I hand over to you, please?
Thank you, Mark, and good evening to everybody. I'm known for talking a lot, so this is going to be a massive challenge for me, so I'm going to go straight into things. We have been working with Step 2 at Grove House and Crossley Hall since around November time. And for me and people that know me, my interest in mental health and well-being really stems from my own experiences and that of family members. And, you know, maybe things could be different for them if they had the courage to talk. And so that's something that I just instill in all the pupils that I work with and staff that I work with as well. So for us, having a counsellor in school, we've been able to have that opportunity through Step 2, and that was put to us by Christian and the team at Birth to 19, and we are forever grateful. It was a subsidised offer. We've been able to use some catch-up funding towards paying for that for the year for both schools. It's something that we're seeing lovely results with, and actually how can we build that into our programme moving forward. I agree with our colleagues here, recovery, catch up, don't like those words, but sometimes it's hard not to use them. We want to make sure our children are in the right place mentally to be able to learn, rather like understanding Maslow's hierarchy of needs and how that works as well. So we've had Step 2 in both schools since November. Our counsellor Penny is just fantastic. She's just like a member of our school family now. We met with Pauline and Penny, and I believe Pauline is on the call as well, right at the beginning of setting this up to establish how this would work, how school wanted it to work, and we felt really listened to in that we knew our children and this is what we needed. It's definitely something that parents have appreciated. The counsellor Penny will talk to parents as well and get their talk. When we went into lockdown in January, it wasn't a case at all of Step 2 saying, well, we can't come into school. It was a case of Penny and Pauline saying to us, well, what else can we do? How can we make this work in the meantime? And that's what we really needed. Penny works with 5 pupils. She's in school a day a week, each school, 5 pupils in each school. She works with them for around on a 6-week cycle. And then we decide what next from there. It might be that, you know, as with any counselling service, and you know, and I've had that as well, that that process is extended. Or it might be that actually that 6 weeks is what that child has needed. And then we look at who next. Just like you would with any kind of interventional assess, plan, do, review kind of approach. Definitely, as I say, it's definitely something that we want to continue using in school. We're looking at creating a community space. We know that our schools have really grown as a hub within the community, and how we support them moving forward and support Bradford moving forward as well. This idea of it's okay to talk and it's okay to ask for help. If we can instill that in our children now as they grow up, just imagine how powerful that could be as they grow into young adults and adults in the world around us. We're particularly excited as well to be working with Helen and Lisa and her team in that Grove House are a Wave 2 school. We're very excited to be involved with them. Like other people that have spoken as well, you know, it's not that we've seen new issues from our children. We've not seen nothing that we weren't aware of, but what we have seen is cases and issues amplified. So those with emerging needs before, that's come back bigger, and that's something that we need to address. Thank you to whoever's just posted, it's okay not to be okay. And I think you are absolutely right. It is okay not to be okay. We've loved working with Step 2. I'd absolutely recommend working with them. I know we're not here to sell or push that in any way, but I think it's been incredibly powerful as forming part of our wellbeing package across school. And that's me done, Mark, believe it or not.
That's fantastic, Lynette. Thank you so much. Wow, what a fantastic testimony to the brilliant practitioners. You know, just sort of across the sort of a district, whether it's in sort of schools, whether it's in our health services, whether it's in the sort of our council. We are so fortunate to have such an amazing group of individuals in this district, but we're also blessed by brilliant sort of a leadership and leadership that is absolutely committed to sort of supporting this whole systems way of working that we've been hearing about. So let me hand, without any more waffle, across to Kirsten, who is just an amazing sort of chief exec for us. And Kirsten, if I can just hand over to you now.
I'm just blushing, Mark. And listen, first of all, can I say a huge thanks, Mark, to you and Christian for the invitation to be here this afternoon, because it's been a privilege actually to be here. And kind of the first thing to say is just what a phenomenal amount of thoughtful, committed work is going on. And actually the thing that gives me hope and optimism and lifts me, and I feel very lifted by the whole discussion, is the level of integration now going on in the work and the very strong partnerships that are growing. And one of the upsides of this pandemic is we've got to know each other that much better, and we're bonded by our kind of shared desire to make a difference, and we're bringing more of what we're doing together. So I'm really, really pleased to hear about all of that, and quite humbled to hear about it all. I do think that the Living Well framework has huge potential, and if we can situate the Healthy Minds work within Living Well, I think that will be fantastic. I will take some stuff from today that's really important about that asset-based and positive approach around hope and optimism. I'm really pleased to hear that it's about staff well-being as well as the well-being of children, because you cannot have one without the other. And also it was great to hear people talking about play and fun and laughter, and as well as the kind of the wider work on the kind of curriculum and so on. And I do want to say thank you, as I've said before, to you all for that resilience, tenacity and commitment you've shown to young people of our district. You showed it before the pandemic and right through it, and I know you were there with children in the best of and worst of times. The next thing I was just going to touch upon, Duncan shared an overall very positive picture about falling levels of infection, and he's quite right to. I just have to slightly temper that with saying that clearly Bradford is still in the top 10 of most infected places in the country, and we have drawn the interest of government as a place of enduring transmission. I'm seeking to use that to support us all really to get improved support around testing. And I heard that issue about the kind of weariness of kind of parents and children about registering their results. We're pushing for the streamlining of that system. We're also pushing on flex on symptoms and quickening the testing processes and results, and then contact tracing and wider support for self-isolation. Because I have to say, we will be with this for some time yet. We're also, and I think someone asked a question about vaccination flex. Think about being Christian, about multi-generational households receiving vaccination. And we're in a very difficult spot at the moment where the vaccine supply appears to have dried up in terms of first vaccinations. And we're pushing very hard with government that for places such as Bradford, which have both enduring transmission and lower levels of take-up, and many of you are serving communities that have been disproportionately infected and affected and have lower levels of take up. We are pushing for that kind of prioritisation of supply and directing it into the communities around you. And the other thing that I'm really concerned about at the moment and pushing with government is, you'll know that we have over 1,000 kids not in school because they're overseas, and many of them are now in red list countries, which means that they're required to self-isolate in hotels at great expense. And it's both delaying the return of families and therefore delaying children's ability to access education. So it also means that they're being accommodated at huge expense in London and Birmingham, or potentially being vulnerable to kind of securing other routes through and potentially being exploited in that. And we also have some safeguarding concerns around children. We'd really like to get the children home, to support them to self-isolate at home and to support them to have the continued access to education. So pushing really hard on that. On a wider basis, on the kind of moving through and beyond, it probably would be good at some point to cover the wider programme that we are working on around the summer. We'll be running a huge programme called Summer Unlocked of cultural and physical activity across the parks, the spaces, the places, very much community-based around localities. We'd like you to know and encourage children and families to take part in all of those things. And that will go alongside the bespoke summer activities programme and the summer university type work that we're doing for kids. On a wider basis, I am really concerned. We have the second highest youth claimant count in the country at the moment. And for those of you who are secondary heads, you know, you're 16 to 20, well, you're 16, 17, 18-year-olds, the prospects for them are pretty challenging. So we'd like to share more about our involvement in the apprenticeship programme, the Kickstart programme. We're working on a universal offer for children in Bradford, children, young people for 18 to 24-year-olds. There's been much focus, obviously, on school age, but thinking about your years 11, 12, 13, and just getting closer to you on the kind of the next stages of their life, that transition, which is can be really challenging for people. As part of that, and Mark will have updated you on that, we've launched the Digital Makers programme, which is kind of, you know, hopefully will benefit 30,000 children across Bradford, giving them critical kind of range of digital skills. And the final thing I was just going to mention, and again it connects to wider work that Mark's doing, is recently the council just approved the clean air zone for Bradford, which actually will be a real milestone, I think, in children's wider health and well-being. There's been quite a lot of national coverage of the first time a coroner has listed air pollution as the cause of death. You know, sadly, I know many of the primary schools in this country, and my kids went to Saltaire Primary, by the way, you have some of the worst air quality in Bradford at Saltaire. That is damaging the health and well-being of your children. So I'm proud. We're about the 4th place in the country to implement one. Ours is the biggest and the most ambitious. And we need all of your support to kind of make sure that it's successful. So that's, Mark, it's a bit of a potpourri, as I said. I'm happy to take any questions, but really, you know, this is your afternoon and I was privileged to just hear about the work. So thank you.
No, thank you, sort of, Kirsten. It's fantastic. And, you know, we just keep saying we need every part of the system to come together to make the sort of changes we require. So it's just fantastic, really fantastic for you to give up so much sort of our time and to listen and then to give us such sort of thoughtful insights. Christian's actually put something in the chat. Christian, could you just want to say it out loud? That's probably easier.
Yes, of course. It was around school roles, really, and around concerns that have been raised to me from head teachers around children missing from education and rising numbers of elective home education, perhaps where that elective home education is less than we might wish, and also concerns around the significant falls that we've seen in some areas around the access to the free early education offer at age 2. That was my 2 questions.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So you may know from Mark that we speak regularly with the DFE and we're raising elective home education at every turn. You'll know that the kind of locus and leverage that the local authority has around this issue is pretty minimal unless we've got kind of grounds for concern. But we are moving into a much more active phase of engaging with every parent that has opted for elective home education and trying to give them that wider support, including, you know, the opportunity working with you for them to re-enter a school and go back on the school roll. But I think we share that concern, and also the number of children, as you say, not taking up the free under 2s offer, and also who are not appearing for the reception now. I think there are a significant number of children across our district who haven't had early years education and have missed out at the early stage. And you know this, Christian, from your 50 things to do before you're 5. That's critical. If they've missed those developmental kind of support for those developmental stages, then that is very significant for a child and its development. So share that, and we're pushing. How far we're getting is debatable, but we continue to push, and with the Children's Commissioner, who's newly appointed.
But that's so critical, isn't it? It's that pushing. But like, if there's only one person sort of pushing, we don't get very far. But if all of us are pushing, and we're all pushing in that sort of same direction, it feels like we can really sort of change this. I just want to say a massive thank you again to Kirsten for giving up the time. So a huge sort of thank you to all of the speakers today. It's been inspiring, and it does feel like it's that watershed sort of moment. It does feel like we genuinely are transitioning from this dark time, fittingly, to sunshine. The road ahead is sort of long and hard, but I just feel so inspired. I feel so energized from everything I've heard sort of today. So we're going to keep that sort of a pressure up. We've got our next sort of webinar where we'll keep sort of talking about mental health, but next time with a focus on our staff. And we'll just keep up the sort of good work. Thank you so much to everybody for participating. Look forward to seeing everybody in a month's sort of time. In the meantime, we will send out all these materials. You've heard the offer from numerous sort of people to get in sort of touch and make sure all those links are sort of shared. So please go out, enjoy the sort of sunshine, and please keep up the brilliant work that you're all doing. Good evening.